verses 1 and 2, Luke tells us that two groups of people were coming to Jesus to listen to him. First, there were tax collectors and sinners. Now, these women and men correspond to the younger brother in Jesus' story. When it says they were sinners, it means that they engaged in wild living. It means that they didn't really follow the commandments. They didn't have any regard for God's moral rules and so forth. And it also means that in that context, in Jewish culture, they didn't obey the ceremonial laws. If you have a friend who is Muslim or Jewish, you know that there are ceremonial laws of how they keep clean before they touch the Quran or before they eat a meal. Well, these sinners were people who wouldn't follow those ceremonial laws either. Like the younger brother, they left home by leaving the traditional morality of their families and of respectable society. That's the one group that was drawn to Jesus. Second group that's listening in are the Pharisees and the teachers of the law. And they correspond to the older brother in Jesus' story. Like the older brother, they had held to the traditional morality of their families and their upbringing. They studied and obeyed Scripture. They worshipped faithfully. They prayed continually. In just 2 verses, Jesus shows us, or Luke rather, shows us how different their reactions to Jesus are. In group number 1, the tax collectors and the sinners are gathered around Jesus, Luke tells us. And the Greek verb for we're gathering is in a tense, the progressive tense, which indicates that this was an activity that went on all the time. This wasn't a once-in-a-lifetime thing. People who were irreligious or who were outside of the religious community were drawn to Jesus. They followed him wherever he went. They accompanied him. And that phenomenon puzzled the religious types. In fact, it made them angry. And so Luke records here, and he records elsewhere in his gospel, that they began to mutter. You ever muttered about someone? You ever been muttered about? They're muttering about Jesus. This man welcomes sinners and even eats with them. And the emphasis on eating is important because in that society, when you ate with someone, it was a sign of acceptance. It was a way of communicating to those who saw you at the meal that you accepted this person as a friend. How dare Jesus include sinners like that, they were saying. I mean, these people never come to our services. Why would they be drawn to Jesus' teaching? He must be watering things down. Jesus must just be telling them what they want to hear. Otherwise, why would they follow him around? Question. To whom is Jesus' teaching in this parable directed? It's directed to the older brothers, the second group. Jesus is aware of their muttering, and he's aware of the attitude of their hearts that lies beneath the muttering, and he does not like it, not one bit. And so he tells this story to make a point. The parable of the 2 sons takes an extended look at the soul of the older brother, and it climaxes with a powerful plea for him to change his heart. You know what I find interesting is this, that ever since I was a kid, anytime I heard Luke 15 talked about, anytime I heard someone speaking or teaching on this, it almost exclusively focused on how the father freely received the younger son back. You know, I almost picture listeners. In fact, I probably was one of those listeners, and the tears are welling up in your eyes when you hear this message of God welcomes us back no matter what we've done, no matter how we've sinned. It doesn't matter as long as we come back to him. But here's what a recent book on this parable uncovered for me. To do that and to leave that as the main and only message of this parable is to sentimentalize it. See, the targets of Jesus' parable are not wayward sinners, but religious types who do everything that this book requires of them. Jesus is pleading not so much with immoral outsiders as he is with moral insiders. He wants to show them their blindness, their narrowness, their self-righteousness, and how these things are destroying both their own souls as well as the people that are close to them. And because of this, the original listeners were not moved to tears when they listened to Jesus tell this parable. No, they were thunderstruck and angry and outraged. Because Jesus' purpose in Luke 15 is not to warm hearts. His purpose is to shatter categories. I appreciate the way that author Tim Keller puts it, and I quote, "Through this parable, Jesus challenges what nearly everyone has ever thought about God, sin, and salvation. His story reveals the destructive self-centeredness of the younger brother, but it also condemns the elder brother's moralistic life in the strongest of terms. Jesus is saying that both the irreligious and the religious are spiritually lost. Both life paths are dead ends, and that every thought the human race has had about how to connect to God has been wrong." We'll let that one sit. Fact, both younger brother types and older brother types are always with us in this auditorium, in our community around us, in the broader culture, and even in the same family. Frequently, the oldest sibling in a family is the parent pleaser, the responsible one who obeys the parental standards. Any guess where I fall in the birth order? Yeah. I just thought I'd put it out there because you'd guess anyway. The younger sibling tends to be a rebel, the free spirit who prefers the company of peers to parents and the admiration of their buddies. The first child grows up, takes a conventional job, settles down near mom and dad, while the younger sibling pulls up roots and moves to Toronto. Or as in the case of so many in Canadian culture, including my own family, the younger brother heads west. Right? Go west, young man. What's interesting is this same dynamic that plays in our nuclear families, in our individual homes, also plays out in our broader society. The younger brother, older brother dynamic also plays out in Cambridge and in the culture around us. First, you've got the younger brother types. More and more people in our culture consider themselves non-religious or even anti-religious. They believe that moral issues are highly complex and are suspicious of individuals or institutions that claim moral authority over their lives or the lives of others. The younger brother types. And then you've got the older brother types. Despite or maybe because of the rise of this secular spirit, there's also been considerable growth in conservative or orthodox religious movements. Alarmed by what they view as an onslaught against what they stand for and what they believe in, many have organized to take back the culture. And they take as dim a view of the younger brother types as the elder brother in this parable did. $1,000,000 question. Whose side is Jesus on? Is he on the side of the younger brother types or the elder brother types? In my favorite film trilogy of all time, The Lord of the Rings, when the hobbits ask the ancient Treebeard whose side he's on, he answers, "I am not altogether on anybody's side, because nobody is altogether on my side. But there are some things, of course, whose side I'm altogether not on." And Jesus' answer in this parable is very similar to the one that Treebeard gives. He's neither on the side of the irreligious younger brothers nor the religious elder brothers. In fact, if you look at this parable, if anyone is warned as being in the graver danger, it's the elder brother, the self-righteous, religious type person. It's hard for us to see this today, but that when Christianity first arose, it wasn't called a religion. It was the non-religion, the unreligion, the uncola, if you will. Imagine the neighbors of Christians asking them about their faith, the early Christians. "Where's your temple?" they'd ask. "We don't have a temple." "What? But how can that be? Where do your priests labor?" And the earliest Christians would have replied, "We don't have any priests."